Cool. Jayden, it's great to meet you. Thank you, sir, for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. So, in your world of being an entrepreneur, very successful, I want to know this. I know that COVID was quite a while back, but the pandemic did so many things. It opened up our eyes, it changed so many things. How did you ultimately get through that COVID time period, and how has it affected residually what you do now in your business?
Yeah, so COVID was massive for the e-commerce industry. As you can imagine, it accelerated so many things. Obviously, we're gradually moving away from physical commerce and retail more and more into online shopping, and that just accelerated during COVID, right? Because suddenly everyone had to come up with a solution to still be able to serve and sell their customers, despite the fact that they couldn't get them into physical stores. So I wasn't in e-commerce for my own business during COVID, so I sort of missed that boom. And there are some people I know who were running their own businesses in that time, and the growth they saw was like generational. And therefore, there's a lot of people recovering because obviously it sort of took a dip after that, and they made changes in their business to sustain a COVID level demand. And then obviously, naturally, that dropped off a little bit after the pandemic. But then also, it changed a lot of perceptions in customers' minds of what can and can't be done online. My business that I recently sold was in high ticket e-commerce. So, our average order value was north of £5,000, sort of in the region of $5,000 to $6,000, which, traditionally people would have had very restricted mindsets on whether that can be done digitally online. They like to see, touch, feel. And that acceleration during COVID towards the fact that if the business does their job adequately to help the customer in a digital setting, that whole experience can happen online. Obviously, only for those customers for whom it's appropriate and who want it. But I think that portion got a lot larger. So that was what it kind of did for my industry, I guess. I started my business that I sold recently at the back end of 2022. So just as life was coming back to normal, to be honest. Uh, so for me, really, what happened in the pandemic and the shift that happened was a shift in terms of what I wanted out of life. I went from being in the office 5 days a week, spending very little time with my wife, with my friends, with my family. I lived for the weekends because for the most part, I was getting home, I was having some dinner, and then probably going to bed. And so I sort of was always looking forward to the next holiday, weekend, whatever it is. And then suddenly I was at home 5 days a week, and me and the wife are taking the dog for a walk in the middle of the day, or we're having our lunch together, and it's so pleasurable. And for me, it was really hard to go back after that. And that was the one of the big sparks that told me that I wanted to make a change in my life towards becoming a business owner, self-employed, to do more of that. So that was the real trigger for me. COVID was less of a industry thing and more of a mindset shift.
The interesting thing with our election that just happened, there's a government efficiency oversight that's going to be run by Elon Musk. And I guess there's this big call to get everybody back in the office. And now all of these companies are starting to do it. But it seemed like for a long time there, everybody was embracing this remote thing. And they could chart results, they could chart success, whether or not people were doing their jobs. What do you think about that? Does that seem a little antiquated that we would roll all this back after these revelations from COVID to do that in person again?
Yeah, I think it's really tough. First things first, I love the idea of an entrepreneur by trade getting involved with public policy and government. I think that is something that would massively benefit my own country, the UK, as well. I think often you learn things as an entrepreneur that you have to find a way to make things work, and something working on paper and working with regards to the way you change people's habits, mindsets, etc., are two very different things. And I think typically entrepreneurs come with a different skill set to be able to do that. So firstly, I think that's an awesome precedent, and I hope that success sort of triggers more similar action. um in terms of whether I think it's the right thing to be moving people back into the office, I think no doubt that, like anything, somewhere in between is probably the right place for us to land. And we need to learn where that is for probably each individual subset of people. I think entrepreneurs are typically remote workers when their businesses are small. It's very common for an entrepreneur to be remote without much contact because so much of what we do, particularly in e-commerce, it doesn't require a physical location. And as a result, their ability to spend time with their family, to be a parent, etc., goes up, which is fantastic. On the flip side, their propensity for loneliness and isolation also goes massively up.
Yeah.
So, there's two sides, as there is with anything to the coin. I think the main thing coming at it from sort of a idealistic, slightly entrepreneurial mindset is that the onus should, in my opinion, be on the company to create the right environment for its people. So, no doubt there are things that are better in the office, but that is not going to yield fruit if those companies are bringing people into the office and then keeping their people isolated. If they're
Yeah.
just having them there in a physical location, but not facilitating their ability to talk to each other, interact with each other, then we are just going to blindly walk back towards where we were before. And that would be sort of quite an economic reason to go back towards this, i.e., there are a lot of businesses that are suffering because people are no longer commuting to the office or buying lunch at the office, coffee, etc., which those businesses should need to adapt in order to serve the new way in which people want to go to the office. And the same with companies. Like, ultimately, if you believe your workforce are better with some time in the office, you need to make that space, in my opinion, a space that helps them to be their best and happiest selves when they're in there and get the most value. Because I had days in my corporate job where I'd travel an hour to the office to sit with my headset on meetings with people around the world, interacting with no one. And then I get in the car to go home again. And all I've done there is cost myself money, time with my wife, and like the ability to have flexibility. So that's no good. But had I gone there and, filled up my cup with interactions with others, bounced ideas off, experienced interaction, that would have been brilliant. So I think the onus fully falls on the instigators.
That's a great answer. I love that abstract because it's totally true. Because it's really about socialization. If there's anything we learned about the irony of living through COVID was that we were all connected in a way that we were never connected before, but we were still isolated to a good degree because there's nothing like being in a room with a human being and interchanging those ideas physically.
100%. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think there was a lot of appreciation for social conscience, and everyone talks about this idea of work-life balance, which I think is incredibly difficult, because it inherently implies polar opposites between work and life, which I think kind of is a reality. A lot of us see work as something we have to go and do, and the rest of the time that we get afforded outside of that is our life and what we enjoy. That was actually one of the big things that drove me to become a business owner, because I hated the idea of spending 50 years of my life, or there or thereabouts, essentially thinking of 70% of my week as, or waking week for the very least, as work, and the bit I just had to get through and suffer in order to enjoy the other 30% or so of waking hours. So I think there is an element of trying to find a way that work and life come a little bit closer together. And I know that's more difficult. Some people don't want to be entrepreneurial and work with a real distinct purpose and vocation. Some people want to do their work for other reasons. But I do think, again, if companies can help their people to feel less like there has to be this delineation of like work pain and life reward, I think that would also go a long, long way. Because then again, we're not sort of saying, oh, by bringing you in the office, we're restricting that life element and removing those privileges. If we can kind of make that also a pleasurable experience where that goes away to filling up a person's cup, that would be really good.
So, what was that timeline like for you when you finally decided that I'm getting out of corporate? Were you nervous going in that day and doing it? And how did it feel when you finally severed that line and you knew that you were on your own and you were going to do your own gig?
Yeah, so it came in two stages. The first stage was I was on holiday with my entire sort of family in law. So, yeah, big family on my wife's side, all the way through to like siblings, parents, kids, right? So we're all away and we're on holiday and I'm having a fantastic time. We go for 2 weeks, so I have enough time to sort of like switch off, reach a bit of like equilibrium in a relaxed state. And then we start to roll around towards the end of the holiday, and I start to notice like those sort of like tickles of anxiety creeping in, and I'm starting to think, Christ, this is almost over. Um, and yeah, we're working towards like going back to work and restarting. I'm sort of thinking, right, I need to reset, but I didn't feel energized. I didn't feel excited. Here we go. I'm gonna dig into a new 3 6 months of work. I thought, oh, back on this sort of repeating cycle. So at that point, I decided to, and the biggest thing I had to battle here was entitlement. I had voices in my ear of people saying, um, you know, So you can't work a 9 to 5 and work like the rest of us. So you have to have more flexibility, more time with your wife. You know, this is what we all do. We all work to keep the world moving, and then we enjoy our holiday every year and our evenings and weekends. And so I was really battling, and I almost needed. I actually read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and that kind of like gave me a very, very popular book. But it gave the biggest thing it did for me was it gave me authorization almost and validation to feel that way. So that was the first thing is I sort of said, okay, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to want more and to try and work towards it. And so I drew a line in the sand and said, right, I'm going to work towards that. And then the second part came a year later after a real grind of working every early morning, every evening, every weekend alongside my corporate job on this new business venture, which I did for a year period because I'm quite a risk averse individual. So the idea of burning the boats and going straight in was unthinkable to me. And so I managed to build the business throughout the course of about a year with my income still coming in, still working my job 9 to 5, but doing everything I could around that. And that allowed me to have that sort of really momentous day where I was able to go in, sort of give my resignation with some profits in the bank and sort of a beginnings of an established business that I could then throw myself into full time. So that was a great day.
So let's simplify a little bit what you do on a daily basis. And I'm going to do it by putting you in front of a bunch of grade school kids at career day. They're third graders and they're curious. And one kid says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Good question. I'm going to answer it based on what I did a month ago before I sold my business because I think that'll be the easiest way to do it. So if I was in front of a bunch of grade schoolers, I would say what I do for a living is I help people to buy things that they are really excited about online. And so if a grade schooler understood online to mean on their phone or maybe on their laptop, but not physically in front of it. And that, in the simplest sense, is what we do in our business model. We are in that exact role of all we have to do in the value chain is get a customer that we think might be interested and that we think we can help, serve that customer the best we can to build excitement, educate, help them to understand everything they might need to understand, help them to overcome anything that worries them or objections they might have about making this purchase, and then help them to complete that purchase and then support them through that fulfillment journey as well to not only make sure that they're able to make that purchase, but then whatever end state they were looking for by doing that, that they actually achieve and get to enjoy it. And so that might be as simple as someone wants to spend £5,000 on a new cold plunge for their home. We're not in the business of, literally just executing a sale of a cold plunge. We're in the business of taking a customer all the way through from problem aware, whatever that problem might be. It might be a person who's just discovered their mortality. Some of their friends just had a heart attack. They suddenly fell out of control of their health and they want to take control. And we want to help that person agnostic of credit card information. So that might be for some customers, just helping them to discover the nearest place local to them that they can go and start trying to cold plunge for free. It might be helping to educate them of all the things they're worried about. Is this going to cause me other health issues? I have perhaps blood pressure issues. Is that going to be a problem? Helping them feel like we're dissuading their concerns. And, for some of those customers, it's going to be appropriate that as we take them through that journey, that we do help them to find the right unit for them and then to start using it. And then the end state they might be trying to achieve is, right, I now feel like I can confidently and habitually use this and start taking control of my health. And yeah, if we do that and support them on that journey, then we've done our job as a retailer.
So I got to know, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I wanted to be a footballer or a soccer player.
Okay. Okay. Who's your favorite guy?
Well, I tell you what, I'll be very, very impressed if people know. So my favorite footballer is a chap called Mark Noble, who is like the least sexy footballer or soccer player you ever hear. But West Ham is my team, has been since I was like old enough to speak. And he was captain of West Ham for about 10 years. So yeah, he's not the one you probably usually hear, but he was my hero growing up.
Here in Kansas City, they call us the soccer capital of the world, which I don't know how valid that is, but we got a lot going on here. And Time Magazine picked us as the top. We have a women's professional team, and we built the first stadium in the world, and they picked us as the top destination in the world to see a soccer game. So we got a little bit of street cred, and we're going to get the World Cup here, which I don't know how they pulled that
Yes.
off, but it's weird. We'll get. I think we're going to get like 3 or 4 games leading up to the quarterfinal, and then we'll have a quarterfinal here. So that should be pretty cool. So
Amazing. And the fictional home of Ted Lasso as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing too. And Ted Lasso actually, he was at the Chiefs game this weekend, and he went to school at the University of Kansas, and has been really kind of a staple in this area. So every time I see that show, I'm like, yeah, he's one of the local guys, one of the crew. Um, so I'm curious, how did you get this entrepreneurial spirit? What was it about your childhood that gave you this, this gumption to go for it?
That is such a good question because it's so topical to what I'm trying to focus on now. Because as I connect with more entrepreneurs and I speak to more people who have been through a similar journey to me, I realize that a lot of us are driven by the same thing. And some of that is overwhelmingly positive and feels like a superpower. And then also some of it is incredibly difficult. So, for example, entrepreneurs massively over-index on childhood trauma. If you've had an event in your childhood that has caused you to be pre-wired in a way that makes you feel like the world and the conventional system might not take care of you. Your propensity to therefore be an entrepreneur and feel like you need to take that into your own hands is far higher. And I think that's always been uh, something I've had to battle with. Over the last 2 years, particularly, I have had to go to the well so many times through building and selling this business. Working at times where probably years previous I would have thought impossible. Not to sugarcoat it, I kind of went from 0 to 100 when it came to entrepreneurship. When I started this journey, I didn't think it was going to be 24 months from a standing start to, businesses sold and I'm out the other end. And, so much of that was fantastic, but also so much of that I was so unprepared for. And I would say when I was a corporate employee working a 9 to 5, all of my sort of underlying mental struggles, my pre-wiring that made things difficult in life, it was all subconscious and relatively under the surface. Very seldom did things trigger it. As soon as I became an entrepreneur, it was amplified on a daily basis. And, I have big problems with people pleasing, with conflict. Suddenly on a daily basis, I'm having these interactions that are spiking my adrenaline, spiking my stress and anxiety. And it's happening on a daily basis. So you never really feel like you're recalibrating. And you never really take the moment to recalibrate either because you're so focused on, right, I need to plow forwards towards the next thing. So I think it can be a superpower when harnessed, but the biggest thing for me is it's forced me to go on a personal development journey of understanding so much of how we see the world and our worldview is formed in our first probably 8 to 10 years of our life. And that's because, previously it needed to be in terms of we needed to learn that when there was a tiger, we should run and not to eat those poison berries and things like that, right? And that's not serving us like that today. Instead, what it's doing is sometimes trying to keep us safe, but instead making it difficult for us to be happy. And therefore, when my adrenaline system has a big odd spike because we've got a nasty review or a customer's really displeased and has spoken to me in a certain manner or whatever it is, that adrenal response is the same as if I've just walked around the corner and I'm faced with a tiger. And that was the biggest thing that I was completely unprepared for in entrepreneurship. And so I had to learn on the job, so to speak, how to manage my emotions. And yeah, that was really difficult.
I love how you broke that down into a social psychology like Malcolm Gladwell would, because it's totally true. There's levels of trust, there's all of these things that are kind of DNA wired into us that make us who we are. So, who has been that hero, that inspiration for you to make this leap into this life of taking charge of things?
Yeah, I had a little think about this actually because I was listening earlier to a previous guest that you had on. I think her name was, I would say Tara. I'd imagine you probably say Tara.
Probably.
Yes, but she's a hypnotherapist, amongst other things. I don't want to sell her short, but I have also been on a journey of hypnotherapy, doing some of what we talked about previously. And whilst I wouldn't say that's necessarily that my hypnotherapist has been a hero, being on that journey of discovery has probably been the most impactful thing for me over the last 2 years because I had so much subconscious pre-wiring that wasn't serving me that I just had no appreciation of. And there is a hypnotherapist in the US called Elliot Rowe. And he was the first person who I heard speak, and the penny sort of dropped for me around hypnotherapy and that sort of holistic healing. Because I think, like a lot of entrepreneurs and like a lot of people, sometimes your first instinct is things in that area are a little bit woo woo, they're a little bit, fluffy. How much are they really going to help? And then I listened to an interview between Elliot and one of his clients, and his client was pathologically afraid of flying. Every time he got on an aircraft, he felt compelled to get off. He felt that he was about to die essentially, and his anxiety response matched that. His adrenaline was through the roof, and he was basically in flight mode because, well, if you pardon the pun, because he felt that he was in imminent danger. But he had absolutely no idea why. He couldn't, people could tell him every statistic in the world about the safety of flying and all that sort of thing. It wouldn't move the dial. Anyway, he had some hypnotherapy discovery sessions, and what he discovered is that he had some primitive memories that were in his subconscious, but that weren't being pushed forward to the conscious mind when he was making decisions or evaluating whether he wanted to fly. And that was that when he was young, he would sleep in his grandparents' sort of like guest bedroom. And on the wall were photos of his grandfather's business partner who had died in a plane crash. And they told him the story, what happened to granddad's business partner? He died in a plane crash. And so at a very, very young age, that person's mind formed an association of, okay, we absolutely must not go on planes because planes means death. And so this primitive mind formed what was a pre-wiring to keep this person safe that was then running as almost a program in the subconscious later in their life.
Yeah.
And so every time they got on a plane, they were anxious, miserable, terrified, but they couldn't give a rationale as to why. And that's because the subconscious knew why they felt that way, but the conscious mind wasn't using it as means for rational or logical thought. And they broke down that whole journey together and how they got there. And that's when the penny really dropped for me that, we all, and this is a thing I think sometimes people think about past trauma. And I, like many people, would say I had a happy childhood. I think most people would say that. And so they think there's no work to do. But again, the brain doesn't really understand nuances, and therefore it struggles to give you good information for rational thinking. And so I think we all have some work to do in wondering and understanding how we're pre-wired and how that's helping to try and keep us safe in the present day, but maybe not that happy.
So ultimately at the end of the day, as the businessman, as an entrepreneur, what kind of impression do you want to leave on your clients and those that you work with?
So on that, I would say if I could leave them with one feeling, it's that I want what is best for them. I want whether that is to help them with pain, help them enjoy something more, agnostic of credit card information. And that's been something I've really struggled with because we sometimes think of capitalism and profit-driven businesses as that they can't therefore also be looking to help people, because if you truly wanted to help people, you would do it for free, right? And you wouldn't make a profit. And I think I've had to sort of go on a journey. Someone like Ryan Moran, for example, it talks very well about the honor of capitalism, and actually by making a profit and running a capitalist business, it allows you to affect real change, actually innovate in ways that truly help people. Allows you to have a team of people you can look after, and you can also change your employees' lives as well as your customers by, showing up for them in a way that people wouldn't otherwise. So that's been something I've really had to get behind. And so now going forward, if one of my clients or customers said, ultimately, Jayden and his business and the brand he has built, I feel truly want to help me with whatever they've set their mind to, with whatever they've said, okay, these group of people struggle with X or need Y, and we're going to develop everything we can in terms of a customer experience to serve them on that journey towards a better end state. If they said that they felt we were doing that, whether we were a paying customer of the highest, most premium tier, or a completely free customer just consuming whatever content we might be putting out there, that would make me really happy. And I think that is what I try and see as the underlying now driver of everything I do in business, be that marketing, customer service, product offering, etc. Is just how can we help this person, whether they give us our credit card details or not, in the knowledge though that if you act that way, that more of them will.
So if somebody out there is listening to this and they're on the razor's edge of a life change of going from corporate to doing their own gig to having their own outfit, and you could give them a piece of advice right now, what would that advice be?
That building a business is hard, but enjoying the journey is harder. That was the toughest lesson I had to learn across 2 years. I achieved goals that were beyond my wildest dreams within timeframes that I daren't think about. And it didn't instantly make me happy. And I've really learned to put away the sort of, okay, I'll be happy when I sell my business, or I'll be happy when my business is, replacing my corporate income, doing 7 figures, whatever sort of target we put on it. Unless you do the really hard work, which is to find a way to enjoy the journey. And often that work doesn't come tactically on your business, it comes from within on yourself. If you don't do that, then ultimately the likelihood is what you set out to do it for, whatever your why was, so you could have more time freedom, financial freedom, time with your kids, your partner, whatever it is. If you're not a happy, present, sort of mentally strong version of yourself when you're doing those things, ultimately you're not going to be kind of achieving what you set out for and enjoying the journey. So work on yourself in tandem with the work on your business is really important.
So if anyone out there wants to reach out to you, they want to learn more about you, any of the good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, so at the moment we're at Founders, Founders Clubhouse, Clubhouse.co.uk. And that one might trip people up because obviously we're here in the UK, so
Yeah.
.co.uk, not .com. And right now all they're going to find there is just one page of information and an ask for them to give us their email address. And that is just so we can talk to them, understand them better. We at the moment we're not in the throes of a sort of a business venture. We're not looking to sell coaching products right now. We're just looking to understand our customers better and give value, because kind of what I talked about previously, we need to learn more about what before state our ideal customer is in and start helping them towards the end state. And sure, in the future, we'll start to work out which products are going to help them with that and which services are. But right now, we just want to relate to them, connect with them, understand them better, and then help them however we can. So yeah, hopefully a few people will have resonated with something I've said here and have some interest to hear a bit more.
I know I have. Jayden, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And best of luck with everything as we move forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.